Nom Nom delivers fresh food with whole ingredients backed by veterinarian science. Science tells us that a dog's health starts in the bowl, so improving their diet is one of the best ways to help them live a long and happy life. Nom Nom's food is full of proteins your dog loves and the vitamins and nutrients they need to thrive. All you have to do is order, pour, and serve. Ready to make the switch to fresh? Order Nom Nom today. Go to https://trynom.com/curveball and get 50% off your first order plus free shipping. That's https://trynom.com/curveball. Plus, Nom Nom comes with a money-back guarantee. If your dog's tail isn't wagging within 30 days, Nom Nom will refund your first order. No fillers, no nonsense, just Nom Nom. Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by visionary healer and entrepreneur Thomas Worm. Thomas has 15 years of expertise in alternative healing as well as fire service. He is the founder of 7 Ways to Medicine, and he has dedicated his life to empowering people on their healing journey. So we're going to be letting him tell us all about it. So Thomas, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today. I appreciate it.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I grew up in West Coast, Washington State, and grew up with some dysfunctional family stuff, and really found myself having mystical experiences very early on. And so that's we'll tie into that later, but really went through a healing journey pretty young in my life with a pretty hard divorce with my parents. And long story short, and we're going to get into it, but really into my young adult years, I was a wildland firefighter for a very long time. And so the amount of suffering and pain that you put your body through and your mind through, and that kind of job where, you're working 16 hours a day for 2 weeks straight in a very dangerous environment, pushing your body. There was just something that just came out that a single day on that job is like riding a Tour de France. So we're doing 14 days of Tour de France's like in a row. That's the amount of physical exertion you're doing. And so the mind really goes through so much. And, I had my own healing journey with PTSD of when I left the fire service. And so there's a lot of pieces of healing. I think I've been healing for a long time in my life, and it makes me a really good guide at healing.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you what fire service was. I thought that's what it meant, but now we know.
Yeah. And, I did work for the Forest Service, so very different than the city fire. It's very different. We're deep in the mountains. We're dropped off with the helicopter, or we're hiking in, and we're in the middle of the wilderness with pretty, chainsaws, axes, basic radios. This is a very different thing than a city firefighter, and lots of respect for them. It's just so different. It's you're in the elements, you're kind of going back to Mother Earth, and to be in that environment where the fire is at the most extreme in the forest with 300-foot flames, or when it's going big, it's just a whole different level. You get to see fire in a way that most people don't. So I feel like I really got to connect with the elements in that way.
Okay, well, definitely thank you for your service. Tell us about mental and emotional release and what that is, what that means, and how it's different than traditional therapy.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And it's such a integral part to my own healing. And Traditional therapy is, I'm not a trained therapist, so this is just my perspective. Is traditional therapy is really about how you're thinking about something and how we can change the thinking to change the behavior. And so there's a lot of talking involved and uncovering, and traditional therapy is amazing at uncovering things and kind of looking at different ways of thinking. What mental emotional release does is first we start out with a lot of talking about looking about how the problem works. So we're looking at more the process and structure of somebody's problem, say like rage or anxiety or some sort of fear or even a health condition. Like, how does that happen? Do you wake up and it's there, or is there something that happens throughout the day? Like, what's the context? When does it happen? When did it start? And from there, this talking is, yes, we do some talking. It's very similar to traditional therapy, but we're looking for a root cause belief, because the mental emotional release, and we'll get into this more, the beliefs are so powerful and the mind is so powerful. And so these beliefs create a lot of patterns. And so we're kind of sifting through these patterns to get to this root cause belief, this thing. Like, a lot of people I work with, it'll come back to like, I'm not good enough, or some, I'm unlovable, or some sort of deep unconscious belief that's kind of running their life. And so the mental emotional release, what we're doing is we're getting in touch with the unconscious mind. So I think the best way to explain this is, I think we've all had that experience where we're driving and we're thinking about something a lot, and we're just kind of caught up in our thoughts and we're kind of overthinking, right? And all of a sudden you're on the freeway, right? And you're like, wow, I just like went 5 exits past where I was supposed to go, or I just arrived where I was supposed to go. And it's just like, how did I even get here? You know, that feeling where you've kind of tranced out, right? Well, what happened is that you were thinking, but you weren't even thinking about driving the car at all. You weren't thinking about it. You were just driving and you were kind of in your dream world. Well, this happens in life a lot. When we're overthinking, we're in that stress mode. We allow these unconscious patterns to drive our life. And a lot of times these patterns come from our parents, from family, from church or school or some sort of thing. Generally, from ages 0 to 7, we're kind of like a phone just getting uploaded with apps, and we're just running these apps. So the mental emotional release allows us to go back and get in touch with the unconscious mind and go back to the root cause event. So we get in touch with the timeline at an unconscious level, and we visualize, or we ask the unconscious mind to go back to the very first event, and we change the perspective there. So we're changing the time perspective. We're kind of visualizing and looking at the event from a higher place. And what happens in the unconscious mind is that the energy or the way that belief is held in releases. Now, this is really powerful because we're releasing beliefs in the unconscious mind, which affect the whole body, affects the whole mind, affects its energy system. So it's not just that one event, though. This is what's so powerful about mental emotional release is we release that one thing at the root, but then we come up back along the timeline and release the whole timeline in that context. So if we're releasing anger, we go back to the very first time. Like, I'll give you an example. I had a client that his root cause was like, and it sounds silly because we're so young, but it's this way we create these programs. It was a birthday moment, and his mother like pushed a whole bunch of cake in his face, and it was really uncomfortable, and like he kind of choked a little bit. And it was like playful. It was from love from the mother, but there was an interpretation that he put on it, and it really affected him. Like, his whole life, there was a lot of patterns with addictions and anger and rage. So when we released that one little event and came back to now through anger, we released all the associated patterns, all the associated beliefs, all the rage. And so we do that with anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, any major beliefs. So the mental emotional release is really powerful. And the thing is that we're working with the unconscious mind. So it's very different than traditional therapy. Where it gets even more different is sometimes the root cause is in the womb during birth. It could be past life or genealogical, passed down from, parents or grandparents. So it gets, it gets alternative, absolutely. And it's, I would say the things I've seen in myself and also my clients have been uh, miraculous, honestly. That subconscious reprogramming is very powerful.
Speaking of traditional therapy, why do you feel like traditional therapy does not account for energy?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. I think there's part of this, if we look at psychology, where psychology actually came from, it came from hypnosis. Like hypnosis was actually the foundation of psychology. Especially look at the ancient Greeks and kind of where these sleep temples would came. It's so interesting because I think somewhere when science came, and science is so powerful and so beautiful, we need the scientific method. And science is all about dissecting and reducing and reductionists and materialism. And so, what's so interesting is I think science was trying to prove that energy existed, but then they were limited by their technology, right? They thought, oh, we found the atoms, that's the thing, like that's the end of the universe, right? But well, now we know there's way more than that, and it goes way deeper than just the atom. But it was limited with their microscopes at the time. So there was no energy seen. So I think a long time ago in science, it was discounted that there's no energy. And I think at a certain point around that time, psychology kind of split. There was hypnosis, and then there was this new age of thinking, or back then, this new way of thinking of, the mind is a machine, it's mechanical, like this is how it works. So it almost kind of split off. And I would say that hypnosis really accounts for energy, right? But traditional therapy is more, it's looking at more as a chemical, like what's the chemical imbalance? What's the thing that's going in the body that's creating this? Where I don't think that's really accounting for the psycho spiritual aspect of being a human being, right?
Absolutely. Well, talk a little bit about NLP and tell us what NLP is and how it helps clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So the mental emotional release is kind of a flagship technique of NLP, and NLP is really, we're going to start with the foundation here. NLP stands for neuro linguistic programming. It's really a mouthful. Neuro is we're looking at the pictures in the mind, and we're, you hear that saying that a picture's worth a million words, right? Well, in this context of alternative psychology, the pictures in your mind are worth a million peptides and hormones, because that's what the brain does, right? We have a picture come into our mind. The brain kind of transforms that into chemicals and gives us our body, our blood chemistry, basically. So we're looking at the mind and the pictures and kind of our senses. The linguistics is the words, the communications, the way we communicate to ourselves and others. It's really the structure of language, actually. And then the programming. I just kind of explained the programming 0 to 7, how we kind of get these apps from our parents and just run the apps in the background in the unconscious. So when we put this together, we're really looking at the pictures in the mind and what are the beliefs that they're creating and how can we become more empowered. And so we can change pictures around in the mind. We can make them bigger, smaller. We can flip them. We can do all sorts of things with the pictures that have huge effects in the psychological mind, right? In the body. So where it came from, this is where it gets, it's really fun and interesting, is NLP was created in the 80s. There was a hypnotherapist and a computer programmer that got together, and they were modeling. In other words, they went to the person that made the most change therapeutically, like the best family therapist in the world, right? They went to her and said, what's the thing you do that makes the difference? And so they went to really, successful business people. What's the thing you do that makes the biggest difference? So it's really comes down to modeling. In other words, how does change actually happen? Well, let's do that. So it's very pragmatic. The techniques are very simple. Like we have anchoring, very powerful, powerful technique, but it's so simple. And it comes back to this Pavlov dog's experiment. Most people have probably heard of it, but the experiment was they would ring a bell and then feed the dogs. They would ring the bell and feed the dogs. Well, they did this so many times that they just would ring the bell and the dogs would salivate, right? Our life is a lot like this. When you hear a song and you're like, oh, that takes you back somewhere, either good or kind of uncomfortable, or it's a great song, right? You have that feeling that just like it's an anchor. So we have a lot of anchors in our life. So that's just an example of the really simple techniques that NLP brings in, and it's fast. I would say that's the biggest thing with client work is that, typically when people work with me, it's an 8-hour process, like 4 hours one day, 4 hours the next day. And we're talking about a massive transformation that could take 10 to 15 years in therapy. So it's really, really, really fast. And really powerful because we're looking at the unconscious, which, again, from the traditional point of view, it's just so different because what we're doing is what's the program? Let's change the program or the story. Really, let's change the story and how that affects your entire life, right?
Right. So tell us about your company, 7 Ways to Medicine, and why you decided to found it and what you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have another company called Mountain Mind Tricks, which is really focused on first responder, wildland firefighter mental health. So I've been doing that for a long time, is helping other firefighters. And the 7 Ways to Medicine is an evolution of that, where it's more, we help people heal from past traumas and unlock and access their highest self, and then really find a purpose and start taking action in their life. And it's so important that action and focus towards something purposeful. So when we release the traumas and unlock this spiritual potential that we all have, you start encountering synchronicities, miracles, like your life starts changing. And so we do take this alternative therapy, and with 7 Ways to Medicine, we do a lot of work with indigenous cultures and ceremony, with ancestral medicines. And so we're blending the two indigenous cultures, indigenous culture and alternative therapy with energy, right? Reiki. And I'm personally a Huna practitioner, so it's more of like a Hawaiian Reiki kind of feel, right? So we're blending a lot of these modalities, and a lot of this comes back to the word medicine, right? 7 Ways to Medicine. What does that even mean? Well, what happened to me is I was in the presence of one of our elders, Rosio, and she was giving a prayer to the 7 directions, a very classic indigenous way to pray and to bring in ceremony and bring in energy. And I had this experience where it was like lightning hit me. It was an inspirational moment where I saw that this wasn't just a prayer, right? The 7 directions, it's, east, south, west, north, the sky, the earth, and then the center, or our heart. And when she was giving this prayer of tobacco, I had this vision. I was like, this is a spiritual path. Like it was so powerful, and it was really showing me that each direction is an aspect of our psyche, of who we are as a soul, who we are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and also connecting to Father Sky or higher power, and connecting to the earth and harmonizing that connection with our great mother. But most importantly, coming back to center, to who we are, coming back to our heart, coming back to heart coherence. So these things are blending, and there's a book coming out as well to really facilitate this ancient wisdom coming out, because it's so important that we come back to these medicines. And what I mean by that is that I think most people, when they hear me say, they're going to think psychedelics or prescription drugs or some sort of medicine, right? The context here is that everything is medicine. We're actually surrounded by medicine. And the more ceremony you participate in, the more indigenous cultures I've been around, what I've come to understand is that they look at life as a ceremony, that everything is sacred, everything is a prayer. And so the 7 ways to medicine is really coming back to, what is your medicine? What's the modality that's going to help you? What's the medicine that you need right now? What's the aspect? Is it, do you need to connect to the earth? Do you need to connect to more of fire energy to be inspired to move? Do you need some air to clear your mind? There's these different elements, these different energies that come into healing, right? It's a full spectrum healing at that point with the 7 ways to medicine.
So tell us about any current or upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to know about.
Yeah. So there's a 7 ways to medicine book coming out in September. Very excited about that. There's also a guided meditation album that accompanies the book. Very powerful meditations. I think just listening to the meditations can facilitate some healing for people. So there's that aspect. We also have a retreat coming up with Indigenous culture in Mexico. That will be in January of 2024. We have lots of other retreats. And I would say what's happening is that around these ancestral medicines, there's kind of a co-op of different retreat centers and different practitioners. We're all kind of coming together for this beautiful expression of healing through medicine. And like I said, that kind of means everything, like alternative therapy, ancestral healing, whatever it is, retreats, hypnosis, all the things, right? That's one thing I would say the biggest is the retreats and the co-op that's coming together is very powerful and very beautiful. So books, retreats, sessions, yep, it's all good things coming up.
So we can all keep up with everything that you're up to. Throw out your contact information.
Awesome. 7 Ways to Medicine on Instagram and 7waystomedicine.com are beautiful ways to stay connected. And yeah.
Okay, well, close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there was something that I forgot to touch on that you would like to talk about, or just any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
I would like to, my final thought is just coming back to center. Whatever you got going in life, one of the most powerful and simple things you can do is just like stop and breathe and focus on your heart and just focus on coming back to now and into what's right for you right now, right for your body, right for your mind, right for your soul, and just slowing down and connecting to nature more. I think it's something that we feel so disconnected from nature in this modern day, and the more we can go outside and connect and really start appreciating our Mother Earth in a way deeper aspect, I think is very important for all of us to do.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, 7 Ways to Medicine. Please be sure to check it out. And if you know somebody that's into alternative healing, follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Check out that book and that album when it comes out here very soon. If you have any guests or suggestion topics, cjackson102@cox.net is the place to send them. And so I can continue to bring this amazing content to you, please leave me a review if you will. Thomas, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to the audience for being here. Just appreciate it.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.